Good evening, all. This is Jack from Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 14th of September. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take somewhat of note, learn from it, transfer it to trend charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right, okay, last week, a week ago, I was talking about the strong stats this week, and they delivered. So I was expecting to see a couple of things. I was looking for a retest of the high on Qs, stroke NQ, and we saw that. I was also looking for a move closer to the target for the open IHS target on the IWM chart, and we saw that too. Right, next week looks rather different. So we've got basically bullish tape. We've got mildly bullish tape on Monday. We've got pretty bullish tape on Tuesday, but that is the end of the bullish tape for a while. Wednesday is neutral, Thursday is neutral, Friday, which is September quad witching, is significantly bearish. That's only 23% green closes on the 19th. And then we've got bearish day on Friday, bearish day on Monday, bearish day on Tuesday. So it's Monday the 22nd, 28% green closes on SPX. 23rd of September, the Tuesday is 28%, 42% on the Wednesday, 38% on Thursday. The next bullish day we've got after the coming Tuesday, which is Tuesday the 16th, is going to be Friday the 26th. And that, basically, we've got a bearish window, which is going to last for a few days. Going into the rest of the month after that, we've got mildly bullish 29th. Thursday, the 30th, the last day of September and the quarter, is significantly bearish, about 33%. Then we've got a bullish leading day on Monday, and then pretty neutral for the first half or so of October. But for the starting, the current bullish window ends on Tuesday. That is the last day. We've got 71% green closes historically on Tuesday, and we will see how it goes from there. But we've got a bearish window after that, and obviously, in this bullish window, we've seen a pretty decent move up. I think we may well see a decent retracement, but we'll have to see how that goes. All right, let's see how we did last week. Okay, looking at ES, we made new all-time highs. We've got a 60-minute sell signal fixed on Friday afternoon, and I'm leaning towards that delivering overnight or tomorrow. And this would be a good time to see a bit of a pullback, maybe a back test for the weekly pivot at weekly pivot at 66.1450 or maybe lower. Looking at NQ. In Q, we saw the retest of the high, this high here on the Qs, and then we saw it on NQ as well. Pretty decent looking rising wedge here, and again, I'm wondering about some retracement, although we don't have any negative divergence here. Looking at RTY, decent move up, although it was a bit of a slow starter last week. Week 60-minute sell signal is fixed, and that's getting pretty close to possible near this target. We haven't actually managed to get far away from the monthly pivot here, and that's because RTY has actually been weak for most of the start of last week. On YM, nice looking rising wedge here on YM. I've rolled all of ES, NQ, RTY, and YM into December, by the way. And I think DAX and ESTX, that's likely to be towards the end of next week. All right, no current negative divergence on here. Well, we had a tiny amount, but it was so small I didn't really count it in. And if so, we would have already made the possible near miss target anyway. Again, our bullish window still lasts until Tuesday, but I'm thinking we might see a little retracement to start off with. To be honest, that would probably sort out the current negative divergence on the futures. DAX and STX, I was saying all of last week that these kind of look like bear flags for me. They still look kind of like bear flags for me, although we do have possibly an IHS breaking up here on ESTX with a target in the 54.90 to 95 area, but really, I think this is probably a bear flag for me. So we shall see how that goes on Monday and Tuesday. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts. Right, looking at the new ES chart on for ES December, week pivot obviously at 66.14, monthly pivot at 64.67. Although. Yeah, okay. So, sorry, I was just wondering if I had that inside the wrong place, but I don't. No current negative divergence, but actually, if we had a bit of a retracement tomorrow, and then a retest of the high on Tuesday, then that actually could set up a pretty nice looking possible RSI 5 sell signal. So I'll be watching out for that possibility. SPX looks pretty much the same. I have got a possible target above I was thinking might get hit, but it's still some distance away. But if we manage to get up into about 65, 60, 65, 50, 66 on SPX, 50 to 60 area, we might manage to tag this trend line here. Doesn't need to be tagged, but I am aware of that as a possible target above. Looking at the 60-minute chart, again, that's drawn in. At the moment, we haven't really established a new trend line, which we would establish by testing the resistance trend line they're holding. We haven't set a new trend line since we broke down from here. This could all be topping action here, and I am wondering what we'll see after Tuesday. So in the short term, we've got now the RSI 5 sell signal fixed, and we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed. So again, these may not play out till Wednesday. Well, RSI 5 sell signal will probably play out tomorrow, but RSI 14 I'm thinking might only play out till Wednesday. And equally, we might see another retest to set up a full sell signal here. Looking at the 15-minute, we've got a 15-minute RSI 14 sell signal, so we've got a fair amount suggesting that we see some moves down overnight and into tomorrow morning. Looking at the Qs, again, I've got a resistance trend line. That looks probably a bit too high to reach, but I'm wondering about it. We have retested this high, and I am wondering about a possible double top here. No current negative divergence. We could set up a sell signal on the RSI 5. With a pullback and then a retest, which possibly we might get on Tuesday. On the hourly chart, no current negative divergence. I've drawn in this trend line here. Again, we've not established a new trend line here since we saw this last hit. But if we were to set up, reach the target and establish a new trend line here, that would require going up quite a bit. I think that's 590. That would be 5956. I think we need to get up to 605. That probably looks out of reach, but again, something to be aware of. 15-minute, no current negative divergence. Nice move up last week. All right, looking at Dia, we've got we had a new all-time high here. This was looking as though it might be a double top earlier in the week, but no longer looks like it. Again, if we're going to set up negative divergence on the RSI 5, we could do that basically with just a retest, really, as long as it didn't go above this RSI high here. We've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed on the daily chart. On the hourly chart, no current divergence. Again, I'm aware of where this could be a bearish overthrow of this trend line here, but I am aware of this trend line up here, which I've got currently in about the 462 area. And I'm wondering if that might be hit to set up this trend line here, which would probably be my preferred trend line, actually. I'm kind of half hoping that will be hit, and that would be a nice thing to see if we do so. 15-minute chart, we had some negative divergence here, but it's already played out. I've called it because we'd already reached the possible near miss target. Bigger picture, I'm wondering about a test of this trend line support, but there's no urgent need to see that because, apart from the else, I'm not sure about this resistance trend line here, which I'd prefer to come from this high here and would therefore suggest that we would go a little higher. All right, let's have a look at the IWM chart. Okay, IWM, we've got a double bottom target here, and of course that double bottom target is at a retest of the all-time high. That's a 24304, and this is the IHS that I was outlining in May, and we're now getting very close to that target. We've already got an RSI 5 sell signal fixed, and that has managed not to fail last week. We've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed as well. Still wondering if this might go a bit higher, but I mean, to be honest, we could see a retracement and then come back for it. I don't think this move to the upside is likely done, as I've been saying on all of my posts for quite a while. I'm going to try and get a new post out tomorrow morning, by the way. All right, looking at the 60-minute chart, no current negative divergence. Nice looking resistance trend line here, which is holding. No particular need to get over that unless we're going to make a thrust up to get to the target here. And this is already my preferred resistance trend line. So I'd quite like to see that hold. We've made it up to 240.93. That is very close. to the target here at 24304. But I'm thinking that we've got an opportunity to make that in October, and that's probably when I'd expect to see that made. On the 15-minute chart, we have an RSI 14 sell signal already reached possible near this target. Seeing how it develops. Okay, looking at DAX. DAX has obviously been weak. We haven't even made it up to a retest, back test of the the daily middle band or 50 DMA. No current positive divergence here, although if we were to retest this low from here, we could set up a possible RSI 5 buy signal. We have got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and actually I should have marked that in as it's already reached the possible near this target. Looking at Nikkei, we had a thrust higher. I was wondering if this could be the second round of double top when we retested. As it is, and given that the bullish window is lasting for another couple of days, I do have a preferred trend line here on Nikkei, and I'd quite like it to reach what's pretty close to the 45,400 area. So if we reach that in a couple of days, might be 45,500 there, that would make a very nice looking rising wedge resistance. So we'll see. We've still got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, nothing on the RSI 5, but again, pull back and retest. We could set up a string of very nice RSI 5 sell signals here, and we could potentially set them all up by Tuesday if we see a decline tomorrow and then a renewed move up on Tuesday. Don't want to obviously read too much into the individual historical days, but I've got to say they were treating us pretty well last week, and they may well do pretty well next week as well. All right, looking at DX. DX is trading sideways here at the moment. We're really in a range. We have a little level bottom here. I was thinking might make target up in the 98.25 area, but it's not showing much sign of getting there. We're trading sideways, and we've got a decision to make on the bigger picture. Let's have a look at that. All right. Looking at, sorry if I'm feeling sounding a little strange today. It's because I've had a cold all weekend, and I'm still suffering through it, but I'm feeling a lot better today, and I'm hoping I'll be entirely recovered tomorrow. All right. Looking at the US dollar daily chart. I'm reading this as a flag. We haven't invalidated this IHS here. The low is at 97.11. We've only got to 97.25, but we still got technically an IHS here with a move up with a target in the 101.65 area. But at the moment, we've also got a bear flag, which looks like it's broken down, and that's breaking down with a target at a retest of 96.38. Now, that would be an interesting target to make because looking here on the daily chart, we've already got an RSI 5 buy signal fixed, by the way, and a weak RSI 14 buy signal fixed. But mainly, I'm watching here, 96.38 was when we made it a few weeks ago, a test of the of this main rising megaphone support from the 2011 low. If we were to retest that low, that would break that trend line, which wouldn't mean that we would have to follow through immediately to the downside, but what it would do is it would mean that this megaphone was starting to break down, and that I would regard it as being in a topping process from there. That would still be, unlikely as it might seem on the fundamentals, we could still see, we still got a very strong bullish setup here to deliver a retest of the high here at 114.78. And honestly, aspects of this year have been so incredibly random and at odds with any kind of reality that I'm still thinking this has a shot. At the very least, it's a very decent looking pattern, and I always tend to give those quite a lot of rope. And at the moment, we're not seeing anything strong suggesting this isn't going to make target. All right, let's have a look at the other currencies, and just look at these on the daily charts rather than the hourly charts. Looking at the euro, of course, we've got a bear flag here, which is mirroring the bull flag on the DX chart. We've got another one of those on GBP as well. In terms of the short term, really, we've had a lot of sideways action, and this isn't the kind of thing which really tends to give us a lot in the way of signals. But what I would say is, if we were to go back and retest 1.183, which would be a match with the dollar going at least somewhat lower, if not necessarily retesting the low, then that could set up a very nice looking double top here. Looking at GBP, again, make it up to the retest this high here at 1.3789. This could set up a double top, and that potentially could fuel a move up on the dollar, which obviously is still being indicated on the patterns. Looking at the USD JPY, Bigger picture, I've got this lovely looking rising megaphone from the 2011 low, and the next obvious target within the megaphone would be this target here, which would be in the 116 area, but this would be consistent with the dollar going down, not up. But I am thinking we might see a retest this high, set up a double top, and then potentially start that move. We will see how that goes, but I'm thinking that we might see that replace this. As it is, if we broke down directly from here, this would be a decent looking. Would it be a decent looking head and shoulder pattern? No, I don't think it would. It's probably better read as a double top here already, but I don't particularly like it because we didn't quite retest the low here. Retest the high here. I'm still thinking it might come back for it. Looking at the daily chart, again, lots of sideways action, no signals. So waiting to see how this develops. Is this a decent looking head and shoulders? Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, it's arguable, but I gotta say, it's a mess. I prefer them when they're prettier, and this one isn't pretty. USD CAD, bigger picture, nice looking double top here, and I'm wondering if this might break down and deliver a big move to the downside, which would be consistent with a big move down on the dollar. But again, we could come back and retest this high here in the 1.4793 area, and that could set up a nice looking double top. Looking at the daily chart here, again, lots of sideways action. We do have a possible IHS here, which isn't a bad looking IHS actually. This is a pretty decent one. But has it invalidated? Almost, but not quite. It came very, very close to invalidating with a break below this low here. We came very, very close. But it never invalidated. I'm still wondering about a move up here. And we will see how that goes, and that would be consistent with a move up in the dollar. But obviously, if the dollar does make a move down first, it would need to still respect this, otherwise the IHS would be broken. Looking at the Australian dollar, bigger picture, main thing I've been watching is this falling channel here, which has come very, very close to breaking, but hasn't yet broken. So if that breaks, then that opens up a potential move to the upside. Looking at the daily chart, this has been moving more briskly than the others, but still no negative divergence. On NZ's been in this very long and bit strange consolidation. This really looks like a triangle, a descending triangle. So no strong lean in which way this goes, but I would say this would be a decent looking potential double bottom if this breaks up. If it breaks down, I'd need to redraw some lines, but I think the obvious target would be, hang on one second, given that we would already have this trend line here, I would be wondering about a move down into the 0.44 area. So we'll see how that goes, but at the moment, I'd be extending that and then moving this across. So we'll see how that goes. But if you're thinking this isn't giving us an awful lot of clues in terms of short-term direction on US dollar, you're right, it isn't. We don't really have any signals. We'll have to see how it goes. I do have a decent-looking head and shoulders, which is broken down. Again, that's almost failed, but hasn't quite failed. But until then, this has a lean to the downside. All right, let's have a look at bonds. Okay, ZB. Right, looking at ZB here. ZB, we've seen a nice move up, and I was saying that I was hoping that we would hit a significant trend line above, and that would set up a trend line on ideally the bigger picture charts, which would give us more of an idea as to where bonds are going here. That didn't happen, but we've now got quite a lot of negative divergence suggesting that bonds are about to come down. We had a sell signal here, that's already made target. On ZN, we got possible bottom topping action here. We got a 6-minute sell signal, which has reached the possible near miss target. All right, looking at the bigger picture charts. On the daily chart, we've got possible weak RSI 5 buy signal brewing, so that's suggesting that we're going to see a decent rally here in 30-year bond yields. Looking at the TNX chart, we've got a weak RSI 5 buy signal, which is already fixed. I would say these could turn into strong full-size buy signals if we were to retest the recent lows. So I'm wondering whether we might do that. But I think this looks like it very much is setting up for a rally. Looking at TLT, we've got a possible weak RSI 5 sell signal break. So they're all telling the same story on the negative divergence. On the bigger picture, This, I would note, is a potential double top here. And just to mention this, because I mean, it is here. I'm not saying it won't make target. I'm just saying I think it's a bit of a long shot. But I mean, if we were to see a sustained break below 39.06, the target would be in the 26.5 area. I'm thinking that due to basically what's happening with the US debt and the Fed and etc., I think the chances of that happening are close to zero, but they're not zero. So I'm bearing this in mind as a potential pattern. So the fact that I usually ignore it doesn't mean I think it's got no chance of playing out. I just think it's not particularly high. Looking at the daily chart here, obviously we broke down into this consolidation triangle. Could this be an overall flag? Yes. Is there a trend line suggesting that? No, not yet. And it may be that we wouldn't get a decent trend line even if it is. Looking at TNX, this could all be part of a flag or a larger triangle forming, keeping an open mind. But on the daily chart, as I said, we've got positive divergence now. Looking at the hourly chart, we've got an RSI 14 buy signal fixed. On the TLT chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed. This is saying bonds down, yields up. And I think that's going to be the main story we see, although I wouldn't rule out a possible retest of the high before that happens on bonds and lows, obviously, on yields. All right, let's have a look at oil. Okay, oil. We're still in no man's land a bit here, but I think on the bigger picture, and I'll talk to you about why I'm leaning towards it going a bit lower. Obviously, OPEC have been increasing their production. There is a general bearing down on oil prices, and there's a pretty good rationale in the bigger picture for a retest of the low. So I'm leaning towards seeing that still demonstrated. Otherwise, in the short term, as long as the monthly pivot at 64.59 is holding as resistance, I'm not seeing much reason to think this will go up, particularly as this bear flag that broke down hasn't actually made target yet. Got close, but it hasn't made the target here, which is in about the 61.4 area. All right, looking at heating oil, bit of a mixed bag here, but again, leaning towards the short side. We are still slightly above. We closed the week slightly above the monthly pivot, of course, though. Looking at the gas oil, we closed considerably above the monthly pivot, but again, I'm leaning towards the downside. A lot of sideways action, apart from this nice little head and shoulders, which played out beautifully. But apart from that, really not seeing an awful lot that's particularly helpful. Looking at NG is broken down below the monthly pivot and is back testing it. If that holds, I'm leaning towards seeing a retest this low here, which could set up a nice looking level bottom. Now, I've been talking in successive weeks about the case for this going up a buck or more into the winter, into December, and that's actually already baked into the futures. So the futures are kind of assuming it's going to go up a buck. So I'm taking that as a bullish lean. So I'm looking for a reversal pattern here. I'm not seeing a great one here. This could be a rather ugly IHS, but the way we could get a really nice one would be a retest of this low here in the 2.73 area. And ideally, that's what we'll see. We've got a 6-minute buy signal here. It's reached the possible near miss target. All that delivered was a back test of the monthly pivot, which is so far held. All right, looking at the bigger picture on these. And all right, looking at WTech. WTech, we've got a falling wedge here which has broken up, and I'm really looking for a reversal pattern. Do we have alternatives to a retest of the low? Yeah, we could have a rather ugly looking IHS forming here, but I would much prefer to see a retest of the low, which would give us a nice clean reversal pattern. Do I think this leans strongly to the upside after that? Yes, I think it does. And so does the one on heating oil, which is looking pretty similar, except there's much better argument for a double bottom already having formed, or gas oil, which looks the same and doesn't really have an obvious bottoming pattern yet, apart from this double bottom here, arguably, which broke up and has failed. I'm leaning towards seeing retest this low, which is pretty close here. It's only at 1.86. But really, I'm leaning towards seeing retests ideally on all three of these, and then moves up. This overall setup here is suggesting the downside is limited and the upside, really, over the next couple of years is not. So until demonstrated otherwise, that's what I'll be assuming. Okay, looking at the shorter picture, shorter targets, weak RSI 14 sell signal reached possible near this target on WTech. Could this be an IHS forming? I've drawn it in. It could be. I'm leaning against it. We're already significantly below where the ideal right shoulder low would have been. Looking at heating oil, we've got an RSI 5 sell signals fixed. That's reached the possible nearest target. Sorry, should have marked it in, but I'm a bit off my feet this weekend because I've had a cold. Could this be an IHS forming here? Yeah, potentially it could be. Looking at gas oil, no current divergence here. This really just looks like a bear flag. Suggesting a retest of this low here at 1.8552. So I'm leaning towards it making that target. We're not that far away from it, and it would seem a pretty easy looking target to make. All right, looking at natural gas. Natural gas, bigger picture, I'd be leaning towards the downside if it wasn't for the fact that we've got seasonal log coming up. We will see how that goes. Could we see a last move down to test this rising support here? 2.5, yes. 2.5 area. Could we see a breakdown to 1.86? Maybe, but I think that would be a struggle with the fairly strongly bullish headwind over the next few months. Looking at the daily chart, we had an RSI 5 sell signal that delivered, and that's reached the possible near miss target. Obviously, that's broken. That has more or less played out at this stage, and we have still managed to hold the daily middle band, which is at 2.92. If we are going to go back and retest this low, then we'll need to break that with some confidence. If we go up directly from here, could this be an IHS forming? Yeah, it could. And hang on, I'm just going to draw that in. Sorry, as I said, it's to be honest, I've drawn this in already, except as I said, I've been a bit off my feed this weekend. I've had a really nasty cold, and it's not been doing me any favours. Okay, this actually would make quite a nice looking IHS at the moment. If we were to see a sustained break up over the resistance trend line, this would have a target in about the 3.67 area, 3.67 area, which would get us up to here and beyond this wedge resistance. So yeah, that is another option. If we hold the daily middle band, that may well deliver. We shall see. All right, let's have a look at the precious metals. All right, let's have a look at GC. Okay, GC's obviously made a very nice move up here. It got to the retest of the all-time high, and it bulldozed through it, rather dissipating the idea that it might be the second high of a double top, which is great because I didn't particularly want it to be. Short term, this looks like a bull flag forming, setting up a retest of this high and possibly higher, of course. SI, we had a very nice looking potential double top here forming for a while, but again, I'm quite glad to see that fail. We've got the new and then back tested the broken resistance, and the weekly pivot is there too at 41.32. I'm hoping that holds the support and this continues higher, and I'm thinking it might well do that. No current divergence. Looking at palladium. Palladium, we've got a 6-minute sell signal fixed, and we've been after a strong move up towards the possible target here. Well, actual target here, the IHS target in the 13.0708 area. We've been seeing a sharp pullback. I'm still thinking this might have a shot at doing it, so I'm thinking this may well reverse and go up. But at the moment, it's currently below the monthly pivot. Looking at platinum. Looks like a bull flag, not a very high confidence bull flag, but it looks like a bull flag here, which is broken up towards a retest of this high. We were seeing a little weakness later in the week, but not a lot. HG, this still looks like we are forming a bear flag, although it's been forming for a very long time now. Look, 60-minute sell signal is fixed. We've been seeing a bit of a decline, but that's holding the new week pivot area at the moment at 4.63. Needs to do better and get below this trend line here if we're going to see a retest this low, which would actually be a great deal further below. All right, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts on that. Okay, gold. Now, this is something I think I was talking about this last week, but this is the log chart I drew, which I think is the only one really to be watching. If you look at where this has come over the last, thick end of 50 years, really you have to be looking at this on the log scale, and we've got some decent looking trend lines on the log scale. So I'm liking it. It looks decent, and this is likely the only way to get decent targets out of it. Now, we're going through the first trend line that I drew in on that, which isn't altogether surprising. And really, we may go through the second as well. I've got that significantly further up. I think that's probably in about the 4,200 area, 4,500 area, maybe. It's I've got I measured and got a target for start of 2027. This resistance trend line in about the 7,200 area. So I'm thinking this actually is a channel. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it is. And this channel resistance would be the obvious target to make over that time frame. Am I thinking that gold might do that well? Yes, absolutely I am. I think forms of money which aren't the US dollar are going to be a great deal more popular over the next few years because the US dollar is not being run as though it is a sustainable store of value. I think there's going to be real trouble in bonds. I think there may well be a major bonds crash and a loss of confidence in the US dollar over the next couple of years. And when that happens, and it's already happening, to a certain extent, you can see. When that happens, I think gold's going to go up quite a lot. And I think very possibly crypto might well too. But gold has been around longer and has been a reliable store of value for considerably longer than crypto. And it still has, despite the death of gold being called many times, it still has many adherents, and actually I'm a fan too. All right, we've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing here on the monthly chart. Wouldn't take a great deal higher to lose that divergence. All right, looking at the weekly, possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing there too. We've been bulldozing higher. In terms of trend lines on the conventionally scaled chart, we've gone through all of them a while back. Looking at the daily chart. Actually, sorry, no, the weekly chart is here. We've got an RSI 5 sell signal fixed here, and an possible RSI 14 sell signal brewing. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and that hasn't quite failed yet, but it may be on the verge of doing so. We've also got a possible weak RSI 5 sell signal brewing here, but I think in terms of is there anything close here which says that we're definitely going to be turning around or likely to be turning around soon? No, there isn't. And really, on silver, I think the obvious targets are there. We've gone through the obvious resistance in the 39.40 area, and where is the next obvious target? The next obvious target is really up in about it's up in a retest of this high here at 49.51. I'm thinking this looks as though it has legs, and I'm thinking we may well go for it. And I'd like that to happen. This is a huge resistance level because, of course, it was first established. Wait a second. Let me just take that back 30 years. That was first established at 49.45 all the way back in 1979, the big silver crisis then. That was broken by 0.06 in the 2011 high, and that is the obvious resistance level. It's the only obvious resistance level, really. And I'm thinking we may be starting a run towards that. On the weekly chart, no current negative divergence, and obviously well clear. These trend lines held for a while, then looked as though they might hold with an overthrow for a while, and now we're through them. Looking at the daily chart, we've got a weak RSI 5 14 sell signal fixed and a full size one brewing, and a weak RSI 5 sell signal fixed and a full size one brewing. But for those to actually fix, they would need to actually turn. And it's possible that silver might do that, but at the moment, there's no great sign that it's going to. Looking at palladium, on the bigger picture, hang on 1 second. On the weekly chart, I'm drawn in. I mean, really, I'm wondering whether this is all a big bull flag here. We've been seeing. This was the 2022 high here. This was much lower levels before then. So this has followed a very different cycle to the other metals. And this peaked at 34.40 in 2022. It's come down an awfully long way since then. Frankly, I'm not convinced it's stopped going down. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, and since that fixed, we had an RSI 5 buy signal, which made target. Looking at platinum, this is more similar to the other precious metals. It made a high a little earlier. This was back in 2009, I think. Yeah, just into 2009, I think. And then we had a falling wedge, and it's broken up from that, but Is it still possible this is a bear flag looking lower? Yes, it is. And I'm not sure I would really be looking at this as in the same way as I'm looking at the other precious metals. Is there a bullish scenario here? Yes, and I'll just draw it in here because I haven't drawn it in before. And that is, I don't particularly like it, but it would be a valid option. And that is that we're forming the right shoulder on an inverted head and shoulders that could potentially take us back up into that high. We will see. But I think this is traditionally behaved more like an industrial metal, which is mainly what it is. If it starts behaving like a precious metal, then I'd be seeing a lot more upside. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, not been showing a lot of interest in making target. But I would say if we do go and retest the high here at 1491.60, then that could be a nice second high of a double top to take this lower. All right, looking at copper. Copper, we've got a monthly RSI 5 sell signal fixed, and actually these do tend to deliver. So with some exceptions, this was an exception here. But generally speaking, these have actually performed pretty well. Looking at the weekly chart, no current divergence. The next obvious trend line here is this one, which I'm watching here, although it looks a bit different on this chart here. So first target, really, I'd put in about the 4.09 area at the moment, and I think this is a bear flag before we go down and visit that. Looking at GDX, now I had a question about GDX here, and where would be a support level if you were currently short GDX and regretting it? Now, first thing to say is on the weekly chart, we're seeing an awful lot of strength there. And while it's looking very overbought short term, we have no negative divergence here. And we don't have any negative divergence worth the mention on the daily chart either. We've got a possible weak RSI 5 sell signal brewing here. Could this continue going higher for a while longer? Yes. Yeah, it really could. I'm not seeing anything imminently suggesting that we're going to see a reversal. If we were to see a reversal, and I would say that we've got a possible RSI 14 sell signal brewing, but I would note that possible sell signal was brewing a week ago, and in a week it could still be brewing. But if this actually fixes and we start a retracement, what would I be looking for? Well, really, I'd be looking for a retracement of this move up here from 56.5 up into the 70 area. The ideal level for that I'd be thinking really 63, 64. That would be a good escape level for us. Would I advise being short this? No, I wouldn't. Well, I would say I've got a nice looking resistance trend line here, which I drew out earlier. So that is a potential contender, but I wouldn't be reading too much into it at this stage. I'd be far happier with it if we were coming back up and retesting the high, having made a significant retracement. At the moment, this has been in a very, very strong uptrend, and it's shown very little or no sign of weakness. That may continue to be the case. GDXJ is the same, except obviously starting from a lower level. We're not close to the 2011 highs here. Do we have any negative divergence on the weekly chart? No, although looking kind of overbought short term and looking exactly the same on the daily chart. We've got a weak RSI 5 sell signal brewing on the daily. Nothing like that on the daily RSI 14, but we've got that on the RSI 5. And we've still got the same hourly sell signal brewing on the hourly RSI 14. But again, not much to say in terms of is this going to turn. So my advice would be, in terms of GDX, if we see a retracement, that is an if, and I'm not seeing a strong sign that there will be a retracement, but if we see that, I'm always drawing in some options here. I do have a decent looking potential rising wedge here. Maybe this might hold it, and we might see a retracement from here. We are about to see a period coming up on equities which may well affect this with weakness as well. And more strength in bonds. This could correlate with some weakness in precious metals. But to be honest, I'm reaching here, and I never like to rationalize. In terms of, is there a compelling case for this turning here? No. Could it happen? Yes. And there's a case for it, for certainly. Where would I be looking for? First thing I'd be looking for is a back test of 64. And really, I'd be thinking it might not get any further than that. So we shall see. All right, great. In that case, let's have a look at the other commodities. Okay, KC. KC, we've got a potential level top here, and we've broken higher. Is that surprising? Not really looking at the bigger picture charts, so we'll come to those. SB. SB, I was looking for a retest of this low here, and we've seen it. I am wondering about seeing a decent move up here. 60-minute buy signal is fixed, hasn't reached the possible near-miss target yet. On CC, we have a possible bottoming action here, but I'm more to say about this on the bigger picture charts again. CT, possible double bottom here. I'm thinking this could be the start of a very extended move up on CT, so I'm watching this with enormous interest. We will see how that goes. On Lumber, we've got a nice looking double bottom here. We've got a 6-minute buy signal that's fixed and is getting close to the possible near-miss target. Hasn't quite reached it yet. I'm thinking we might deliver a rally here. But the bigger picture, I'm leaning quite heavily towards the downside. Looking at ZW, I was talking about this needed to go just a little lower last week, and it went a little lower. I'm thinking this could be a significant low forming here. I.e. a very significant low forming here. I'll talk more about that on the bigger picture charts. Corn, again, I'm wondering whether we've made a significant low. And at the moment, I'm not seeing any action particularly to contradict that. Looking at the soy chart, soy, I'm leaning towards this going lower. At the moment, soy doesn't seem to be agreeing with me, but I'm thinking as and when it's played out, we may well see more downside. Could this be a head and shoulders for me here? Yes, but it would be impressively ugly. Looking at soybean oil, I'm seeing a bit of a rally here after a nice little downtrend. Again, I'm leaning towards more downside with soy on the bigger picture. Live cattle, we've got a nice looking little lower bottom here. I think this might take us much of the way back up into a retest of the high. We shall see. Bigger picture, I'm not seeing anything really to suggest this is going to go lower. But if we made more downside and got into the area where we've got possible head and shoulder necklines here, then that would be a stronger case. Short term, I'm wondering if we're heading back into a retest of the high. Lean hogs, we've broken up from this rising megaphone. This could still be a bearish overthrow, but normally that's confined to one break above, not one, then a more extended one. So I'm leaning towards this being a potential actual breakout. We've still got a 6-minute sell signal fixed here. That hasn't been a problem for making all of these recent gains, but sooner or later that will probably play out. But at the moment, I'm wondering seriously if this is broken up. All right, let's have a look at those on the big picture charts. Okay, coffee. I'm wondering about a retest of the high. We've got a possible weak RSI 5 sell signal brewing on the weekly, but really this is looking for a retest of the high, particularly so as I've been drawing this as a possible bull flag, and that bull flag has broken up. It broke up last week and broke up, pulled back a bit, followed through. I'm leaning towards seeing a retest of this high here at 4.41. Bigger picture, that could be the second high of a double top. Is that too large to be a double top? Not really. The target would be a move back into the one area, but actually you can see that's an area where we've spent a lot of time over the years, and wouldn't necessarily need to make the full target, but I'm certainly thinking by historical standards, this could be a break higher, and we've just come back to back test it, but really, bigger picture. For most of this time we've been coffee's been trading at all, it's been massively below these prices, and I'm not thinking these are sustainable. Looking at sugar, obviously I've got this apocalyptic head and shoulders leaning lower, but shorter term, we've got a potential little level bottom here, and I'm thinking this may well deliver. I've got a falling wedge here. I'm liking the upside on here. Break over 1705 takes us back up into basically up into a potential test of this trend line here, currently in the 0.189 area. If we get there, and it confirms this wedge, then that is a bullish pattern, suggesting more upside, so we'll see how that goes. Looking at sugar on the daily chart, weak RSI 14 buy signals fixed, it hasn't made target yet. Nice looking level bottom. I was looking for the retest the low, we've seen it, and we've got a nice looking level bottom here. We will see how that develops. Looking at cocoa. Bigger picture, we've seen some opportunities to break higher, but we've not been taking them, and we've been heading lower. We've got a big support level down here at 64.27, and that looks like the obvious next target. We've got an RSI 5 buy signal fixed here on the daily, so I am wondering about a rally. Could this be a double bottom here? No, it couldn't. It's too large relative to the preceding decline. So really, I'm thinking we might see a rally, but after that, probably lower. On wheat, we need to go a little lower to retest this low here at 495. This is the spot price, so it's not entirely correlated to the futures price. But we saw that retest, and then we've seen a rejection higher. We've seen a little level bottom has now broken up, which could take us back into the 540 area. I think we're adding about 15 or 20 here to get back to the futures price at the moment. Hang on, let's just check that. Right, that low is at about 512. Okay, so we're adding about, let's say, add about 17 or 18. So that would get us up into about the 560 area on the future. And then this whole thing here, maybe a double bottom. I'm thinking we may be looking at a major low on wheat. And we'll see. That could potentially start to move to take us back up to retest this high here at 720. Looking at corn. Corn, again, I'm wondering about a major low. We've got this falling wedge here. At the moment, we're not showing any signs of continuing down towards the wedge support. We've got a lovely looking double bottom. We haven't broken up over wedge resistance yet, but I'm thinking we might well. And as and when we do, then we've got a very nice looking double bottom here. Sustained break over 50450 would have a target in about the, what would that be, about the 620 to 625 to 635 area. So up in this kind of area. That would be a decent looking retrace, and might only be a Fibonacci retracement, but it would be a decent one. Looking at the daily chart, we had a daily RSI 5 buy signal. That's made target, but I'm not seeing much reason for this to reverse. I have drawn in. I'm mainly watching the IHS neckline here in the 435 area, but I have drawn in a potential IHS here, which could take us beyond that into about the 445 area. Looking at soybeans. Bigger picture, this still looks an awful lot like a bear flag. There's various ways of drawing it. I could draw this as though it's already broken down, but I'm drawing it as though it is still forming. But really, this is a sideways to up action, which looks like a year-long bear flag. So that, my obvious read is that it breaks down from that sooner or later and makes retest this low. Will it always do that? No. It just usually does that. Right, cotton. We saw the retest of the low here. We saw the retest of the low here. We've broken up from this wedge. We've got a lovely looking, we've got a short-term little level bottom here, but mainly I've got a very large double bottom here, and I'm thinking we may be making a major low here on cotton, basically finishing the move down from this big high in 2022. Waiting to see how that develops. Lumber, I was saying when we made this high here at 698.50, that could well be the second high of a double top, and that double top has now broken down with a target in the 350 area. That real target is a retest this low here at 352.50, and I'm thinking that is likely coming. It's a very nice pattern setup, and really I'm not seeing much reason for lumber to not be going down there. So we shall see. Looking at the daily charts, we've got daily RSI 14 buy signal fixed, week RSI 5 buy signal fixed. I am thinking we've got some scope to the upside, and of course, looking back at the Looking back at the chart here, this is one reason I'm thinking this double bottom here may well play out. Sustained break over about 604. That would take us up into about 644 area with obvious resistance up here in the monthly pivot area at 629.17. So we shall see. But I'm quite liking that. All right, let's finish off with crypto. Okay, crypto. Bitcoin so far has held the weekly middle band and held it with confidence. Last week, we haven't quite finished the current week, I don't think, but over the last week, we held that as support. Previous week, we'd broken back over it. I'm leaning towards this going higher. Ideally to a retest of the high. We're back over the 50 DMA, which was the two key resistance levels I was looking at last week were the daily middle band, which it broke over, 50 DMA, which it broke over, and we had a little IHS here, which has broken up with a target at about the 119.6 to 8 area. I'm thinking that might deliver a retest of the high. And if so, that could potentially be the second high of a double top. Looking at Solana, we saw a very nice move up last week. Might be needing a pause at the moment, but bigger picture, this broke over the trend line I was saying we would really need to see broken to see this head up towards the IHS target. And it's heading towards the IHS target, which I've got in about the 282, 283 area. That would probably follow through into retest the all-time high at 294.95. Looking at the short-term chart, Not seeing much reason for this to come down at the moment, and I've got a trend line marked in here that might be resistance, but we haven't quite reached it yet. We got pretty close at 249.92, get up to about 252, and we would hit that. That might be resistance. Ethereum. There's a nice looking double top set up here. We do have an RSI 5 sell signal fixed on the weekly. Not showing much sign of playing out at the moment. I drew in this double top here, which is quite nice. Easier to see on the hourly chart, but at the moment we're not showing any sign of that playing out. And I'm thinking the obvious next target, if we see some more upside over the next couple of days on crypto, would be a retest of the all-time high here at 49.55.89. And that could set up a smaller double top. So we shall see. All right, great. In that case, that's a wrap, guys. Everyone take care, and I'll catch you again on Wednesday.